welcome to another episode of the Veterans History Project, brought to you by the Lawrence County Museum of History. Our special guests today are David Bailey and John Mavon, both Vietnam veterans. As always, my co-host is Lee Hutchinson, World War II bomber crew member. Lee, thanks again for being here with us.
Glad to be with you here, Brad. Glad to have you fellows in today.
Appreciate it, gentlemen. Truly do. We'll start out, I guess, with David. David, what branch of the military were you in when you served in Vietnam?
I was in the Army.
Army? And what did you do in the Army? What was your specialty?
I was a clerk typist, my MOS.
Clerk typist. Didn't matter. Soldier's a soldier. Here's your rifle.
Right.
And you went to Vietnam. What exactly did you do while you were in Vietnam?
Well, I was assigned to MACV headquarters, and that was the place I worked at. It was called a Ordnance Advisory Division. It was an advisory group. We were stationed at a Vietnamese ammunition base there just north of Saigon, south of Ton Son Nhut. And there was about 30 of us Americans there, and all the munitions and weapons and ammunition that they used in Vietnam was supplied from the U.S., and we had to maintain a supply level. I worked with, there was probably maybe 300 Vietnamese, partly military and partly civilians on this base there. And it was just kind of for a 19-year-old kid, it was really a strange way of life over there, you know.
What years were you there, David?
67 and 68. I was there 18 months altogether.
67 and 68. So you were there during the Tet Offensive?
Yes, I was, right in the middle of it.
I can only imagine. It didn't matter if you were a clerk typist or an infantry. When that went down, everybody was out on the line with a gun.
Well, the sad part about what that was, when we arrived, they had to give a lot of weapons and stuff to the Vietnamese, the South Vietnamese military. And so when it come to me, we didn't need a gun because we was in a safe zone, so they said, and didn't have enough to go around anyway. So actually when Tet hit, I just took the lampshade off my lamp and took the bulb out. I didn't want to break it, you know, and I was just going to use that as a club. But when it, you know, in Tet, there's 3 weeks there, it was martial law, and, buildings burning and all kinds of firing and shooting and stuff, and they would fly over the top of our hotel building. We lived in a hotel that was built by the French back in the 20s. And it was just an old rundown like a Greystone hotel. And they would shoot the gun out of the airplanes at the enemy there in the rice paddies, and the shells would bounce off the building, you know, the rejected shells. So I got me out of a chair and I went and sat in the shower, which was a concrete wall, and that was my bunker. And they told us to stay away from the windows, you know, because of bullets flying.
They were that close to you.
Well, oh yes, they would.
Now, this is a helicopter.
Sound like raining.
Helicopters or fighters?
No, it's fighter jets. They'd cross above us, you know, and it'd be far and way out there in the rice paddy, and there was some action going on out there. And sometimes, you know, when the action was farther away, we'd get on top of the hotel and watch those helicopters, and they'd shooting tracers, you know, coming straight down at them, look like there's peeing fire on them, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a big ball game, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, we just kids drinking a little beer.
I'd pass on that.
John, what branch of the military did you serve in Vietnam?
I was also in the Army, Brad, and I actually was at IU in the mid-'60s, and that was really when the Vietnam was starting to build up at that time. And they were actually got to a point where they were starting to draft, you know, kids out of school, depending on what your draft deferment number was and so forth. So they made the announcement that if you got into ROTC, then you're automatically deferred because you know you have a commitment for active duty in the Army. So I enrolled in the ROTC program, and I finished, graduated in 68, was commissioned in 68, and at that time you could actually request up to 1 year deferment before you actually went on active duty, which I did. And they didn't give me 1 year, they gave me 9 months. So I actually went on active duty in, let's see, it would have been 1969. And my branch was armor. I was tanks and APCs. Went through my initial training at Fort Knox. My first year was spent at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and then I got my orders for Vietnam. So I was there from March of 1970 till March of 71. And my duties were, when I got over there, I was assigned to an armored cavalry squadron, which consisted of about 1,000 men, and we had 90 armored vehicles, both tanks and APCs. And I was operated mostly in 2 Corps, which was the 2nd Corps down in Vietnam there, mostly based in Southeast 2 Corps. And pretty much from there it was routine. The days were spent recon during the days and ambush at night, and that was pretty much the tour. So I guess our biggest highlight was for our unit and a lot of guys there in May of 1970 was when Nixon gave the go-ahead to go into Cambodia, which in my opinion was about 2 years, too late. I mean, we should have done it way earlier because all the supplies were coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail into, through Cambodia and Laos. And we never went in there. That was hands-off area. And then when Nixon made the decision to go in, it was interesting because we were in Southeast 2 Corps, and our unit was dispatched, immediately. And what they did was we had to get all the way to the other side of Vietnam. So we had a road march up to Cam Ranh Bay, and then all of our unit, all the tanks and APCs loaded on LSTs, the old Navy landing craft, and they took us up. It was actually a 2-day trip up, dropped us off at Nha Trang, and then we marched across the whole country, Vietnam, over to the east side there, or west side, and went into Cambodia from there. So, and then we operated there for, probably 2 months, and just along the border, and then went back to the Southeast 2 Corps there in about July of 1970. So that was pretty much it.
Were you in a command position, John?
Yeah, I was platoon leader for the first 5 months, and then at that time I was promoted to first lieutenant, and then they made me executive officer of the troop, which consists of about 200 guys.
So it's a company level
Yeah,
position.
it's a company. In armored cavalry, you had platoon, troop, squadron, whereas in the infantry, you had platoon, company, battalion. So that's pretty much how it worked there.
So you had to take all the tanks and all that armor equipment with you.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was on the LSD.
Everything was on the LSTs. Yeah.
So you seasick, you get across.
No, actually, that was actually a very pleasant trip because that was one time we didn't have to worry about mines and booby traps out there. So everybody was pretty relaxed on the LSTs going up to Nha Trang.
How many days was it?
2 days.
2 days to get
Yeah.
across.
Yeah.
And then you landed all your equipment.
Landed all the equipment, and then we road marched all the way across Vietnam. Interesting going through there, if you ever look at a map of Vietnam, if you look at QL-19, which is a road that runs from the west side to the east side of the country, and I had a very seasoned platoon sergeant, fortunate for me, but he pointed out to me one of the highlights of that road march going all the way across the country was going through a place that was called the Mang Yang Pass. And as you know, the French were there before us, and it was interesting because they ultimately, left as we did many years later, but going through the Mang Yang Pass is where they had that famous ambush of the Mobile 1 unit where 1,000 Frenchmen were killed in the Mang Yang Pass. And my platoon sergeant pointed out to me on the side of the hill, you could actually see the graves. They were 1,000 Frenchmen buried there, standing up, facing France. So that was an eye-opener.
That was an Asian trick, too.
Yeah.
They could carry the message to you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, for the audience's edification, LST stands for Landing Ship Tank. That's the type of ship that actually has a front port that will lower and allow tanks or armored vehicles to depart the ship.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Mr. Bailey, What other jobs did you do in Vietnam besides the clerk? Did you have to pull guard duty on?
During the Tet Offensive, we stayed in a hotel and building. We had martial law for 2 weeks. And then some bright guy got the bright idea that we need to go in and guard our place of work and, if we got overrun. So I was informed that I was going to be on the night duty from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And anyway, we arrived there. I got in. They picked me up with a Jeep. There was 4 of us, and they had weapons and grenades and everything else. I didn't have a thing. Still no weapon whatsoever. This was when the Tet Offensive going on. And anyway, we got into the office there, and there was nobody there to speak of except the Vietnamese military guards. They had pup tents on our porch where they were sleeping, And we went in there, and this captain, he opened the rifle safe or whatever they call it, and he handed me a Thompson submachine gun. Never had my hands on one in my life. Put a 30-round banana clip in it, and put a shell in it, and put a safety on it, and handed it to me. And he gave me a second 30-round magazine clip. And he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And he went over there, and he got a sack of phosphorus grenades. And we had 4 classified safes there in the building. 3 of them were confidential, 1 was secret. And he said, if we're overrun, pull that pin out of that grenade, throw it in that safe, and shut the door. And then there was 4 of them. And then they all left and went to another building. Left me, 19-year-old kid, all there by myself. I figured I was probably first defense and probably expendable. It was one heck of a long night. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I could hear the rat-tat-tat, rat-tat-tat, kaboom, kaboom, right outside, there behind the Buddhist pagoda. And as long as it stayed way out there and the flares was in the air all night long and I could see all that and hear it, and I thought as long as it's out there, I'd be all right as long as it stayed there. And he said, if anybody comes in that door, you shoot them. So I sat there with that Thompson submachine gun, and I thought, how did I get this safety off? And I played, it's dark, and I was playing around with it, and I figured that out. And then I said, how do I reload this magazine? And I got the feeling of it, and it felt like an M14. This little snap trigger and pop it in there. But lo and behold, after a long, long, long night, it got daylight. And nobody ever came. And finally, them scaredy cats come over and come back and said, let's go home. So that was the worst night. Then I had a second time, another occasion. The first building I was at, like I said, we weren't infantry, we weren't combat soldiers. We were there to do office work. Where were they going to put us? Well, they was using every building they had. The French built all kinds of big old hotels and buildings in the country. Saigon was a pearl of the Orient at one time. All these big fancy boulevards and big walled up, buildings and stuff. And then this Japanese come and everything went south, It looked like the Greystone Hotel. Dingy and gray and dirty looking. Well, everybody moved out of them. So, but then they decided, well, let's clean these up a little bit and rent them to the United States for the soldiers. So that's what we got. And the first place I got, at the time, there was like 500,000 troops there. And there was nowhere to put you, So I said, one day, the first day I got there in the country, I sat there with my duffel bag in the office, nowhere to sleep. And he finally found a place that they went down in the slum part of Cholon. That was next to Saigon. It was the slum side of town. That's where all the VC lived.
Oh.
And so they went down there and they built a real nice little pretty building and had a big fence around it and none of windows or stuff on it, but inside there was an open courtyard. I was on the second floor in the back, and one person in the room, a little bed and everything. And anyway, make the story shorter, one morning the guys would walk out in the morning out of the fence, get on a bus. They had all these old Navy school buses, and they'd truck them off to wherever they went to work. Well, the place I worked didn't have a bus, wasn't on the bus route. So we didn't have enough Jeeps and vehicles to get us all, so they didn't come and pick me up till about 8:30 in the morning. And there was no breakfast or nothing, But that one morning there, the guys was all getting in line, getting on the bus, and laying there in bed still, just I could hear all this, and I kaboom, real loud. Then another kaboom, real loud, and I rolled over on the floor and slid under the bed. Somehow the bed wasn't very high off the floor, but I got under it somehow. But anyway, I run outside and down to the stairway there. I started down. There's guys that are hunkered down in the stairwell, and they said, "Get back in the room. We're being attacked." Well, I went back to the room and put my clothes on real fast, and I thought, "What am I going to do? I don't have a weapon or nothing. I was only been in the country like 30 days, and if we're being attacked and overrun or something." Well, they had a lamp table there, and I took the lamp and unplugged it and took the shade off of it and screwed the bulb out of it. I didn't want to break it, and I picked it up and I thought, anybody comes in that door, I'm gonna beat them to death. But anyway, I heard of feet walking outside, and they didn't have no window glasses where they had louvers, Remember the louvered doors and stuff?
Yeah.
And I could hear somebody walking down the walkway there, and I could look down and see feet, through the louvers, and I could see it was a commissar. That was a Vietnamese policeman, and he was there. And so anyway, I kind of was relieved a little bit, but I went outside later, and what it was loading on the bus. They had two lines going to the bus, and a VC come out with a grenade, and he threw it into the group. And the MP there, he was in a little hooch there, and he dropped down in his little cubby hole there, and he said, "Grenade," and it went off. Well, when it went off, there was another one come out on the other side, and the MP come back out of that little hole there, throwed another grenade and killed the MP outright. And it ended up there was 4 people killed and 7 wounded, and just blood everywhere, But like I say, I didn't get to go to work till about 8:30 in the morning, and of course, the sergeant major, they couldn't get nobody down there to get me because the roads were blocked. They had tanks and MPCs.
The entire town was infiltrated.
Yeah. The town. Well, it was Tet. It was a holiday. That was everybody's birthday, and everybody would come from their hometown, to where they was born, their families. But when they come in there, and them groves and groves of people, they had all these guns and all these explosives and all these stuff with them. They infiltrated the whole city, But anyway, finally my sergeant major and 3 other guys come, and they looked like John Wayne was hell-bent for a war. They had all these grenades and everything else to get me. And they took me back to the office then, and he said, "Get your clothes, Bailey, you're getting out of here." Called me Beetle. I become Beetle Bailey, of course. But anyway,
that fits.
they took me back, and I got to another hotel, which is another mess too. But it finally got condemned and moved out of it. I was on the 8th floor, and there was no elevators.
You get trapped in a town like that with an armed force running through it.
Yeah.
You're in trouble.
Yeah. But there's a lot of stories. I got a lot of stories here, but I'll give them to you when you're done.
When you got on the other side of Vietnam, you got fought your way up or around or in?
You mean going across the country?
Yeah.
No, it was all pretty secure going all the way across. It wasn't really until we hit the
That's
resistance.
when you got there, you had to.
Yeah, we backed up. We were actually, when we got our orders and we got all the way over on the let's see, it'd be the east side. It was near Pleiku, and we were attached to the 4th Infantry Division as kind of a ready reaction force. So they went into Cambodia deeper than we did, but we did go in over the border there, and then we were kind of a ready reaction force for them. But actually along the way, no, there really wasn't any resistance.
What type of equipment did you operate, John, while you were there?
Interesting. We had, as a platoon leader, I had 10 armored vehicles, 53 guys. Those vehicles were 3 M48A3 tanks, which were Korean war vintage tanks, had a 90 millimeter gun. And then the other ones were armored personnel carriers. They were M113s. And those had waist guns of M60 machine guns on each side, and then 150 caliber machine gun in the middle, below. But also in armored cavalry, we had the luxury of one of the APCs, one of the seven, actually was a mortar track, and it carried an 81 millimeter mortar in the center of the track there, where the hatches would open up. It could get, swivel around 360 degrees. So our pretty much our routine during the day was we'd recon and force, and then at night we'd set up in what's called a logger position, where we'd actually like circle the wagon, so to speak, and then we'd put the mortar track in the middle where it could cover 360 degrees around the logger. And that's pretty much the way we operated. It was day in, day out. It was, recon and force during the day, looking for the bad guys, and then at night we'd send out ambushes, and it was 7 days a week. I mean, Monday you never knew what day it was. You operated on Sundays, Saturdays. They all seemed the same because they all ran together. I mean, we never had passes or anything like that. It was just consistent.
Your ambush was on the trail?
Yes, yeah, we would. We'd set out ambushes. We'd go out. Usually, we would send out usually one, sometimes two ambushes, which would consist of 8 to 10 guys dismounted. They'd go out, and probably anywhere around, I'd say, anywhere from maybe a quarter mile to a half a mile at most, and yes, looking for trails. And we'd set up along the trail.
I think it's interesting that we have the supply people and the action people here today. We got lucky. We got both sides of it.
Well, I read many times that for every combat soldier in a war, you got 5 men supporting him.
Yeah.
There's 7 men supporting him. And, you got to have somebody get toilet paper, somebody to get uniforms, and somebody to get bullets, and it takes quite a few people just like running a circus,
Bombs and rockets didn't care what you did if they found you.
Yeah.
That's right.
You got bombed a lot?
No, not really. Our biggest fear, and remember, I was there in 1970 and 71, so it was actually starting to wind down at that time. I think when David was there, the peak was in 68. So it was, our biggest concern was mines and booby traps, especially mines, especially because for the armored vehicles. It didn't bother the tanks much. It would blow a track off if a tank hit a mine, which usually was a booby-trapped American artillery shell, which had been recovered by the Viet Cong, and then later used as a booby trap for them. But it would definitely do serious damage to an armored personnel carrier. So our tanks weighed, those M48s were, they were 52 tons, whereas an armored personnel carrier was maybe 13 tons, so a lot lighter.
Yeah, the reason behind it's no secret. 1968 was the worst. That was our presidential election year.
Right.
So the Vietnamese, actually the Viet Cong, were trying to influence the presidential election.
Exactly.
And they did a good job of it because it was March 31st of 68 that Johnson withdrew.
Yeah.
So David, you were part of the beans and bullets, as we called it. I was a civilian in Afghanistan, but you can't make it without the beans and the bullets getting to the guys in the front line. So was that basically your position, was to make sure that they were supported with all the necessary hardware they needed to pursue the war?
Once a month we done a report. We called it the VAMP, Vietnamese Ammunition Report. And it had we had with all the South Vietnamese military throughout the country we was in contact with. It wasn't me, but everybody else, they'd say, bammy to it, just screaming at each other on, because the phones were very good over there then. And they'd have to say how many M16 shells you got in your bunker, how many
Yeah.
rifles, or how much mortars and grenades and 105 howitzers and all this names and stuff. And then they would put a total together. Of course, they give it to these, and we had to correspond letters and stuff through the Vietnamese back and forth. And then we had these women working in the office. I had two of them working in my office with me, and they would interpret what was said in these letters. And then I'd type it in English, and I'd stamp on it secret after they read it, you know.
After they,
But anyway, then when all this information was put together, we'd have to type it up. And several times each month, we'd have to type up this report. And there'd be a lieutenant colonel and a major and somebody standing behind me, you know. I'd be typing along, and I'd make a mistake, and I'd have to stop and erase something, and then I'd go typing some more. And they was waiting on me to get that report so they could take it to Westmoreland, General Westmoreland, so he could give it to Johnson to know what the supply level was, and they need to raise it because we had some contact with all these explosive places all over the United States that had to supply the whatever.
oh yeah.
And I remember one time, back them days, you know, we didn't have copy machines. You had carbon paper. And some of these reports we would do, you'd have to make 7 copies of this thing. So you had these onion skin papers. The top cover would be regular typing paper, then all the rest of them would be real thin. And you put all them carbon papers in there and try to get them in your typewriter, you know. There was manual. And type it. And of course, if you made a mistake, you know, you had to go in and blot it all out, you know, erase it all. But anyway, then they'd send all these copies to all these different places. And this one guy, Kramer was his name. He went over as a PFC, and when he went home, he was still a PFC. Mm. But one of the reasons why was he typed this big report and had 7 copies. And of course, when you take it out of the typewriter and you got this carbon paper, you can just hold it up and read it. And it was classified, you know. And he took that carbon paper out and just put it in his drawer. And he messed up, and he thought he got too many copies, so he just saved it and put it in his drawer too. And Sergeant Major come over and said, "Hey, Kramer, you shorted me a copy. I need another copy of that report." He said, "Well, that's all right. I got one right here." So he had a classified paper in his desk, you know. So, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff with the military, you know.
John, were you attached to the 4th Infantry Division?
We were. For that Cambodian campaign there, we were attached to the 4th Division. And then later, when we returned from Cambodia, then we were detached, I guess you'd call it, and then went back to our original AO, which was down in Southeast 2 Corps down there.
When you finished your tour, which patch did they allow you to wear on your right shoulder?
Well, it's interesting. I'll add this to it, but so after Cambodia, and we really did make an impact, you know, by going in there. And also Nixon was president at the time, and they all wanted to show that we were disengaging. And of course, the Paris peace talks were going on at the time. So they actually started to bring units back. And ours was one that they said that they were going to bring back to the States, you know, to wind down over there. And it was kind of a joke because we got the orders, you know, that we were going back. But out of the 1,000 guys in our armored cavalry squadron, what they did was they sent 20 back to the States with the colors and then reassigned everybody else, including me, to other units. So my last 5 months, I went from the Armored Cav to the 25th Infantry Division in 3 Corps. So to answer your question, I wear a 25th Infantry Division patch because that was a more notable unit than was the Armored Cav unit. So,
For the edification of the folks at home, what we're talking about, anybody that serves in combat with the United States Army is entitled to wear the patch of the unit that they are assigned to on their right shoulder upon returning to the United States.
Right.
That's why I was kind of inquiring about that. I was with the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado.
oh, okay.
I think Fort Carson's best kept secret in the Army, but that's another story too. Where did you return to when you came back to the States, David?
Well, because of my experience in ordnance and so forth, I got orders to explosive ordnance disposal school in Indian Head, Maryland. and it was a Navy base. It was similar to Crane, but they made a lot of munitions and explosives and stuff there also. But there at this base, they had this EOD school that was run by the Navy, but they had all branches of service there. And they had all these students coming out of boot camp and stuff, and they had refresher classes and stuff come through there. And my job there was they signed me to the Navy as a classified document NCO, a librarian. And these students would come through there, they would have to have books, issued to them. And we'd get, every month, they would update the books, change the methods of EOD, and we'd have to take pages out and put pages in, And so we had these books, we'd have them all put together, and we'd have them ready for these classes. The classes, it's like a MOS, AIT schooling, EOD, and they go through this class, and they would, Apple News. Anyway, something to mess your mind. But I liked the job, and I was inside of a big wire, a metal cage. There was a lot of classified material in there. And that was where my desk was at. And I know the military was funny. We had films. They had instructors there to instruct these students how to take apart a bomb or explosive or whatever. And had these tapes, and they would take these tapes out and show them that they would break. Then, of course, you had to have so many frames on this tape. It told you on the canister had so many frames in it. When you count them, and it was broke, you'd splice it back together. And then when you get done, then you would be about 10, 15 frames short. So we'd just tape 15 more empty frames on the front of it. And so it was good, believe it or not.
There's a lot of schools, like David's talking about, there are a lot of schools in the Department of Defense. Dog school, for instance. Doesn't matter what branch you're in, you're going to go to Lackland Air Force Base to be a dog handler. If you're going to be EOD, you're going to go to Maryland. This doesn't matter. Everybody works together. You have instructors from all branches. And that's what you're talking about with the EOD school.
Yeah.
John, did you have any experience with that, where you had to work with other branches of the military?
Not really. That last part of the Vietnam tour was, was all Army, except they tried to implement what they called a Vietnamization program in the late 70s, where we would work more closely with the ARVN troops. And that was a disaster because at that time, now I'm with the 25th Division and 3 Corps, and we still pretty much the same MO there. We recon and force during the day, ambush at night, but we'd have to take out ambushes. Instead of 10 U.S. troops, it'd be five U.S. and 5 ARVNs, the South Vietnamese forces. And, they'd bring their cooking pots out there and cook rice and everything out on ambush patrol, and it was terrible.
That's not going to work.
No, it didn't work at all. But that's the way it was. But again, to answer your question, no, I didn't really work with any other units. It was all Army.
David, do you have any more memorable events when you were in the Army?
Well, I have a bunch here I wrote down. Yeah, I'm trying to think of something there. You meet a lot of people in the military when you're in the service, and you already remembers their last name, mostly because it's on their shirt. And, you meet all these people, and next thing you know, you're split up, you never see them again. And I've got about 3 guys that I've communicated with that I was over there with. And, you've seen the show on TV, MASH. And, it shows you how that lifestyle is. And that's 100% the way it was for me, because some of the dumbest things happen and take place. And it's just real life, And it's just hard to. I remember the first time when I went to Vietnam, we stopped in Japan. We had trouble with the plane before we left California because I think at the time they was needing so many planes to go so many different directions. They had to go to the junkyard and drag planes out of the junkyard and put them on a trip because they had to work on this plane 3 or 4 times before we got there. And they kept delaying the takeoff, and we finally took off. And He said, was going to go over the top. I thought, what the world do you mean go over the top? I thought, Vietnam was this way. Well, what he was doing was going to go the short way. He was going to go up to Alaska and over to Japan and down. And that's over the top.
It's the polar route.
Yeah, polar, I guess that's what you call it. But anyway, we got to Alaska. It was in February. We had khaki uniforms on, and it was 10 below zero. And we landed there, and we sat there on the runway, and you see the snow out there. It was about 10 foot high on the side of the runway. And we sat there and sat there and sat there, and after we here, about 10 Air Force Jeeps, school buses came. And the steam just smoking off of it. It was cold. And we had these little short sleeve shirts on. And he said, all right, guys, run out there and get in that bus. And we get on that bus, and the driver, he had one of those Eskimo coats on. You could only see his nose and his eyes. And here we was just freezing. So we went inside the air base there, just north of Anchorage. And, in a place like that, they got just a few minimum seats. And had those, I don't know how many, 300 of us on that plane, or maybe not that many, but anyway, we sat on the floor. And the next morning, we was hungry, hadn't eaten since we left Oakland Army Base, that overseas shuttle. And they said, well, the snack bar opens at a certain time, so we went to the snack bar and got over there, and I paid $5 for a hamburger in 1967. And, that's my first experience. But I left there and went to Japan after 12 hours there and sitting on the floor. Got to Japan, and I went into the restroom, and the next thing I know, here come a woman in the restroom. I thought, that's kind of different. Don't do that back in the U.S. Anyway, that was normal over there in Oriental, because we left there and we went, I don't know if it was Okinawa or where. We landed there. I remember when the plane was coming in, we could see out of one window, and I thought, hey, that's far. They're going to land in the water. And just about the time we hit the water, we was on land. But that plane, the beach was built up enough to take the plane load. We run down along the side of the island, turn around and come back, and went straight up a real steep hill. And I think it was Okinawa. It was real hilly. But anyway, there in Okinawa, we went in the bathroom, and sure enough, here come these women in the bathroom again. And that's strange. But in Vietnam there, we realized real quick, the men and women bathroom needs are kind of strange, but the sergeant major wanted us to paint the bathroom. Of course, at the time, I was just a PFC, and I got the painting job, me and another guy. And of course, in the bathrooms, they just had a wall like behind you there, and you could see over the top. And we was up on them ladders putting this whitewash paint on that room, cleaned it up, making it smell good. And you could see on the other side, and them women be over watching us till we got down to come in the bathroom, But
I ran into the same situation in Vienna, Austria. Come right into the restroom cleaning while you're there.
yeah.
John, did you have any unique experiences you want to share with us?
I think that pretty much sums it up, and I look back on it today, and I certainly don't regret my time in the service or my Vietnam service. I think I look back today, and I see people like Lee right here, who I have the utmost respect for, because I think of that all the time. Tom Brokaw termed that the greatest generation, and that's so true, because those guys at that time, I mean, we had it hard, we had it rough, but not like those guys. I mean, we knew we were going to be there 1 year, and if we got it through, then, we were going home. And these guys in World War II, they had no idea how long they'd be there or how long the fighting would go on.
And they had survived the Great Depression.
Yeah.
To be old enough to be drafted into the military at that point, or join.
Yeah.
Well, I always say the Depression, they starved us, tried to kill us by starving us. And they couldn't do that, so they drafted us and sent us overseas to be shot at.
Yeah, one of the more famous veterans we have is Clady Bailey. Are you in relation to Clady?
Yes.
Yeah, Clady was.
Yeah.
His story is quite something. It should be told. We should have somebody, a good speaker, to tell his story.
Yes, that's very true. Who we're talking about is Clady Bailey. He was the basketball coach at Heltonville at the start of World War II. Clady volunteered, like every other able-bodied person, to pursue the war effort. And tragically, he was killed on April 20th, 1945 by a Japanese grenade during the retaking of the Philippines. Wow. And he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest award any veteran can receive. It's just one step below the Medal of Honor. Perhaps we need to pursue that and look and have our people in the Senate and the House look at that. Perhaps he should be upgraded to the Medal of Honor after reading his story.
Yes,
It's very possible that that could happen.
How's your health doing this time we're in right now?
Well, fortunately, I'm still on the right side of the grass, so I don't have any complaints. I've been fortunate. I'm in the VA medical system, and they've done a lot for me, so it's all been good.
Well, I'm in a VA medical system too. I got Parkinson, which is attributed to the Agent Orange.
Correct.
And other things, and they come up with the PACT Act, and I'm getting for blood pressure and for diabetes. That's another Agent Orange thing. But the thing was, over there, the water we drank over there was supposedly purified by the military, and that was the water we drank. And whenever you drop a pill in stagnant water, and that don't make it good.
It just kills the bacteria. That's all that does. I can remember being trained. You would what David's talking about. You would put a pill in your canteen and shake that canteen until it stopped rattling. That was the training of it. You remember that, John?
Yeah, I
Your
do.
spot. You
I do.
shake it till it stops rattling. Then it's okay to drink. Well,
But the food we eat over there, we eat a lot of every meal had a cantaloupe, great big cantaloupe, and it just quarter it, and that was your piece of meat, cantaloupe. Where'd they grow that at? They grow it right out there in that swamp. Where'd that water come from? Is that all that Agent Orange rain in it, Yeah. And we had, you'd have a quarter of a piece of lettuce for a salad, and the food we eat. Now, I think I read where a lot of the meat that we eat over there come from Germany or somewhere. It didn't come from Kroger or Walmart, but it was someplace over there to supply that. And but a lot of the food we eat was growing in that water over there. And I'm taking 7 carbidopa, levodopa pills a day for Parkinson. And as you see it, I can't talk hardly anymore, and my hands are getting more shakier. And there's a lot of people having issues.
David, John, thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having us.
I want to recognize Joe behind the scenes here. He's taking care of all this. Joe Voris. Can't make it without you, Joe. Thank you very much. Lee, thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
And
Learned quite a bit.
on behalf of the Lawrence County Museum and Historical Society, I'm Brad Bough, Vice President of that organization. I want to thank you folks for tuning in and remind you, if you love your freedom, be sure to thank a veteran. And thank you guys for being with us.
Thank you.
So long, everyone.